The sound of a door closing. Soft. Deliberate. Final. She stands motionless in the center of a small living room, her hand resting on her pregnant belly. 6 months. The room is dim. The only light comes from a lamp in the corner, casting long shadows across the walls. Her breath is shallow, controlled, the kind of breathing you do when you're trying not to break. He closed the door so softly that the silence hurt more than the goodbye. Her face tells everything. Her eyes are dry, but red, like she's cried all the tears her body could produce, and now there's nothing left. She blinks slowly. Once. Twice. Her lips part as if to speak, but no words come. The hum of the refrigerator. A car passing outside. The clock on the wall ticking, each second impossibly loud. She moves, slowly, like her body weighs 1,000 pounds. Her hand trails along the back of the couch as she walks toward the kitchen. On the counter sits a coffee mug. His mug. The one with the faded logo from the trip they took 2 years ago. She stares at it. I didn't know you could feel someone leaving even after they were already gone. A flash of memory. Rapid. Fragmented. A hand on her stomach. Laughter. A scan photo on the fridge. His smile. Then nothing. Back to the present. She picks up the mug. Her fingers tremble. For a moment, she holds it like it's something precious. Then she sets it down, carefully, deliberately, and turns away. The apartment is small but lived in. There are baby clothes folded on a chair. A crib, half assembled, leaning against the wall. A stack of unopened bills on the table. Evidence of a life that was being built. Evidence of a future that just shattered. 6 months pregnant. Alone. And the only sound in the room was my own heartbeat reminding me I was still here. Her phone buzzes on the counter. She doesn't look at it. It buzzes again. And again. Then stops. Her hand moves to her belly. She presses gently, feeling the baby move inside her. A kick. Small but fierce. Her expression shifts. Just barely. Not hope. Not yet. But something. I promised myself I wouldn't break. She walks to the window. Outside, the city is alive. Cars, lights, people moving through their lives like nothing has changed. For them, nothing has. For her, everything just ended. She leans her forehead against the glass. It's cold. The contrast between the warmth inside her body and the coldness of the window makes her shiver. A woman's laugh from somewhere outside. Distant. Happy. It cuts through the silence like a knife. But breaking wasn't a choice I got to make. It was already happening. She looks at her reflection in the window. Her face. Her belly. The room behind her. Empty. Quiet. Waiting. She closes her eyes. This is how it started. Not with screaming. Not with rage. Just silence. And a door that closed too softly to be an accident. The ticking of the clock continues. Relentless. Indifferent. 6 months pregnant. Abandoned. This is her story. 3 months earlier. The smell of coffee fills the kitchen. Morning light streams through the window, soft and golden. She sits at the table, her hands wrapped around a warm mug, watching him as he moves through the room. He's getting ready for work. Tie half done, shirt still untucked, that familiar rush she knows so well. She's 3 months pregnant. The test confirmed it 2 weeks ago. They celebrated with champagne for him and sparkling water for her. They talked about names. They talked about the future. They talked like people who believed in forever. I was thinking maybe we could start looking at cribs this weekend, she says, her voice light, hopeful. He doesn't answer right away. He's looking at his phone, scrolling through something. His jaw tightens, just a little, just enough for her to notice. Yeah, maybe, he says, not looking up. She waits. The silence stretches between them like a thread pulled too tight. You okay? She asks. I'm fine. But he's not fine. She can feel it. There's a distance in his voice, a coldness that wasn't there before. She tells herself it's nothing. Stress. Work. The normal weight of life pressing down. He finally looks at her, and for just a second, she sees something in his eyes. Something she doesn't recognize. Fear. Regret. She can't tell. I've got to go, he says, grabbing his keys from the counter. Wait. But he's already moving toward the door. He pauses, turns back, and kisses her on the forehead. It's quick. Perfunctory. The kind of kiss you give someone when you're thinking about something else. Love you, he says. She watches him leave. The door clicks shut. The apartment feels bigger somehow. Emptier. She sits there, staring at the half-empty coffee mug he left behind. Steam still rising. Still warm. Still his. I didn't know it then, but that was the first crack. The first moment I should have known. Later that night, she tries to bring it up. They're lying in bed, the room dark except for the streetlight outside casting shadows on the ceiling. She turns to face him, her hand resting on her growing belly. Are you scared? She asks softly. About what? About the baby. About becoming a dad. He doesn't answer for a long time. So long that she thinks maybe he's fallen asleep. But then he speaks, his voice quiet, almost distant. I don't know if I'm ready. The words hang in the air like smoke. Heavy. Suffocating. Nobody's ever ready, she says, trying to smile, trying to ease the tension. We'll figure it out together. He turns away from her then, his back a wall between them. Yeah, he says. Together. But it doesn't sound like a promise. It sounds like a lie. The weeks that followed were different. He started coming home later, staying on his phone longer, smiling less. When she asked him what was wrong, he'd say nothing. When she tried to talk about baby names, he'd change the subject. When she reached for his hand, he'd pull away, gently, almost apologetically, but still away. She told herself it was normal. Men get scared. Men need time to adjust. She read articles about it, talked to her friends, convinced herself that this was just a phase. But deep down, in the place where intuition lives, she knew. One evening, she found him sitting on the couch, staring at his phone. She walked up behind him, started to say something, and he quickly locked the screen. Too quickly. Who were you texting? She asked, keeping her voice light, casual. Just work. At 9 at night. He stood up, irritation flashing across his face. Why are you interrogating me? I'm not. I'm allowed to have a private conversation without you hovering, aren't I? The words stung. Not because they were loud, but because they were cold. Calculated. Designed to make her feel small. She stepped back, her hand instinctively moving to her belly. Protecting. Guarding. I'm sorry, she whispered. He softened then, reached out, touched her arm. No, I'm sorry. I'm just stressed. Work stuff. She wanted to believe him. So she did. But that night, lying in bed next to him, she couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, feeling the baby move inside her, and she whispered a promise into the darkness. I won't let anything hurt you. I promise. She didn't know then that the person who would hurt them most was already lying right beside her. The crack had started. Thin. Almost invisible. But growing. Spreading. Waiting for the moment it would finally split everything apart. Before everything fell apart, there was a version of them that believed in forever. It started on a Tuesday. She remembers because Tuesdays were her favorite. Not for any particular reason, just because he always said Tuesdays felt like potential. Not the chaos of Monday, not the anticipation of Friday, just quiet possibility. They met at a coffee shop. The kind with mismatched chairs and terrible Wi-Fi. She was reading a book she'd read 3 times before. He was pretending to work on his laptop, but really just watching her. When she finally looked up and caught him staring, he didn't look away. He smiled. That's a good book, he said. You've read it. No. But anyone who reads the same book 3 times must have good taste. She closed the book, curiosity winning. How did you know I've read it 3 times? He pointed to the worn cover, the creased spine, the way her fingers knew exactly where to rest on the page. You handle it like an old friend. That was the beginning. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into late-night walks through the city. Walks turned into mornings waking up in his apartment, sunlight streaming through curtains they kept forgetting to close. 6 months later, they moved in together. A small apartment on the 3rd floor. No elevator. Narrow hallway. Kitchen barely big enough for 2 people. But it was theirs. She remembers the first morning in that apartment. They didn't have furniture yet, just a mattress on the floor and boxes stacked against the walls. He made coffee in a pot because they hadn't unpacked the coffee maker. They sat on the floor, backs against the wall, drinking from mismatched mugs they'd bought at a thrift store the day before. This is it, he said, looking around at the empty room. This is what? Our life. Starting now. She leaned her head on his shoulder. The apartment smelled like fresh paint and possibility. Everything felt right. They had rituals. Small, stupid, perfect rituals that couples collect like souvenirs. Sunday mornings, he would wake up first and make pancakes. She would stay in bed, listening to him move through the kitchen, the clatter of pans, the hum of the exhaust fan, the soft cursing when he burned the edges. He'd bring her a plate, sit on the edge of the bed, and steal bites from her fork. Thursday nights were movie nights. They'd argue about what to watch. She liked dramas, he liked action, and always ended up compromising on something neither of them really wanted to see. But it didn't matter. They'd fall asleep halfway through anyway, tangled together on the couch. Saturday afternoons, they'd walk to the farmer's market. He'd buy vegetables he'd never actually cook. She'd buy flowers and put them in a vase on the kitchen table. They'd hold hands like teenagers, laughing at nothing, making plans they half meant and half forgot. There was a mug. His mug. Dark blue with a faded logo from a trip they took to the coast. He used it every morning. She never touched it. It was an unspoken rule, the kind of small ownership that couples create to mark their territory in shared spaces. One morning, she used it by accident. He noticed immediately. That's my mug. I know. I'm sorry. I'll wash it. But he smiled. No. Keep it. I'll use yours. It was nothing. A mug. But she remembers feeling something shift in that moment. A deepening. A sense that they weren't just 2 people living together anymore. They were building something. A language. A life. She got pregnant on a night that felt ordinary. There was no grand plan, no specific intention. Just the 2 of them, close and careless, believing they had all the time in the world. When the test came back positive, she was terrified to tell him. They talked about kids in that vague, someday way couples do. But someday had suddenly become now. She waited until dinner. They were sitting at the small table in the kitchen. She'd made pasta. Nothing fancy, just something quick. She kept glancing at him, trying to find the right words, the right moment. Finally, she just said it. I'm pregnant. He stopped mid-bite. Fork frozen in the air. For a long, terrible second, he didn't react. She felt her heart drop. Then he set down the fork, stood up, walked around the table, and pulled her into his arms. Are you serious? Yes. He held her so tight she could barely breathe. When he pulled back, there were tears in his eyes. Happy tears. We're having a baby, he whispered. We're having a baby. They stayed up all night talking. About names. About nurseries. About the future. He kept touching her stomach, even though there was nothing to feel yet. He kept saying he couldn't believe it. She kept saying she couldn't either. It felt like magic. Like the universe had handed them something precious and told them to be careful. They started making plans. He drew sketches of how they'd rearrange the apartment. She researched cribs and strollers. They argued playfully about which room would be the nursery. They went shopping and bought tiny socks and onesies, laughing at how impossibly small everything was. Every night, he'd fall asleep with his hand on her belly. Every morning, he'd kiss her stomach and whisper good morning to the baby. He started calling her Mama instead of her name. She started calling him Dad. It was perfect. Until it wasn't. But before the cracks started showing, before the distance crept in, before everything shattered, there was this. The life they built. The rituals they kept. The future they believed in. She didn't know, in those bright warm mornings drinking coffee from mismatched mugs, that she was storing up memories she'd need to survive what was coming. She didn't know that the man who held her so tightly, who cried happy tears, who drew sketches of a nursery, would be the same man who closed the door so softly it hurt more than a goodbye. But that's how it works. You can't know the ending while you're living the beginning. And the beginning was beautiful. It happened on a Saturday. She woke up to an empty bed. Not unusual. He'd been distant for weeks, waking early, staying late at work, finding reasons to be anywhere but home. But something about this morning felt different. Heavier. She found him in the living room, already dressed. A duffel bag sat by the door. Her heart stopped. "Where are you going?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended. He didn't look at her. "I need to talk to you." Those words. The ones that come before everything falls apart. She sat down on the couch, her hand instinctively moving to her belly. 6 months now. The baby kicked as if sensing something was wrong. He stayed standing. Distance. That's what he needed. Physical space to deliver what he was about to say. "I can't do this." 4 words. Simple. Devastating. Can't do what? But she already knew. This. Us. The baby. Any of it. The room tilted. The walls pressed in. She couldn't breathe. "What are you saying?" He finally looked at her then, and his eyes were empty. Decided. This wasn't a conversation. It was an announcement. "I'm leaving. You're leaving." She said it back to him like she was trying to understand a foreign language. The words made sense individually, but together they formed something impossible. "I met someone." There it was. The knife. Sliding in clean and cold. "You? What?" "I met someone. A few months ago. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. A few months ago. While she was pregnant. While she was buying baby clothes. While she was planning a nursery. While she was falling asleep with his hand on her belly. Who? It doesn't matter. It matters to me." He looked away. Guilt flickered across his face, but not enough to stop him. Never enough. "Someone from work. We just connected. And I realized I can't keep pretending." "Pretending what?" "That I want this life." Each word landed like a blow. Precise. Lethal. She stood up, her legs shaking, her entire body trying to hold itself together against the force of what was happening. "I'm 6 months pregnant with your child." "I know. You know. That's all you have to say? You know." Her voice cracked. The control she'd been holding onto splintered. He picked up the duffel bag. That's when she understood. This wasn't a discussion. He was already gone. He'd made his choice before he even woke her up. "I'll send you money. For the baby. I'm not going to abandon you financially. But you're going to abandon us." He flinched. Good. Let him flinch. Let him feel one fraction of what she was feeling. "I'm sorry." "You're sorry." She laughed. A harsh, broken sound that didn't sound like her at all. "You're sorry. You're leaving me 6 months pregnant for another woman, and you're sorry." "I didn't plan this." "You didn't plan this? You didn't plan to meet someone? You didn't plan to fall for them? You didn't plan to destroy everything?" Her voice rose, cracking, breaking apart. The baby kicked harder now, responding to her distress. "I can't stay in something I don't want," he said, and his voice was defensive now, justifying, making himself the victim. "You made promises. People change." "People change? That's your excuse?" "People change." She stepped toward him, her hands shaking, her whole body trembling with rage and grief and disbelief. "You said you loved me. You said you wanted this baby. You cried when I told you I was pregnant. You drew sketches of the nursery. You kissed my stomach every morning. Was all of that a lie? No. It was real then. Then. But things are different now." "What's different?" "Me. The baby. The fact that this got real." He didn't answer. He just stood there, holding his bag, waiting for this to be over. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. The man she loved, the man who held her, who promised forever, was gone. And in his place was this. A coward who couldn't even fight for what he'd built. "Get out." Her voice was quiet now. Flat. Empty. "We can figure out the details later." "Get out." He hesitated. For just a second, she thought maybe he'd change his mind. Maybe he'd put down the bag. Maybe he'd realize what he was throwing away. But he didn't. He walked to the door, opened it, and paused. "I am sorry. I really am." She didn't respond. Didn't move. Didn't breathe. He stepped through the door. And then he closed it. Softly. So softly that the silence hurt more than the goodbye. She stood there in the middle of the living room, her hand on her belly, the baby moving inside her, and the world collapsed. Not all at once. Not with screaming or breaking things or dramatic gestures. Just silence. And the weight of being utterly, completely alone. She looked at the mug on the counter. His mug. The dark blue one with the faded logo. Still there. Still his. Like he'd just stepped out and would be back any minute. But he wasn't coming back. She walked to the couch and sat down. Her body felt too heavy to hold up. Her mind felt too loud to process. 6 months pregnant. Abandoned. For someone else. The injustice of it crashed over her in waves. How does someone do that? How does someone look at the life they created, the person they promised to love, the child they helped make, and just leave? She wanted to cry, wanted to scream, wanted to break something. But all she could do was sit there, feeling the baby move inside her, and whisper into the empty room. "I promised myself I wouldn't break." But she was already breaking. She just didn't know yet that breaking was the only way she'd ever learn how to rebuild. The first week, she didn't leave the apartment. She called in sick to work. Told them it was the flu. Her voice sounded convincing enough. Hollow, weak, distant. They didn't question it. She spent the days on the couch, staring at nothing. The baby moved constantly now, rolling and kicking like it was trying to remind her she wasn't alone. But she felt alone. More alone than she'd ever felt in her life. The bills started piling up. Rent. Utilities. Credit card statements. She'd always split everything with him 50-50. Now it was all on her. She opened the envelopes with shaking hands, did the math in her head, and felt the panic rise in her chest. She couldn't afford this apartment. Not on her salary alone. Not with a baby coming. Not with maternity leave looming and childcare costs she hadn't even begun to calculate. The second week, she forced herself to go back to work. Her co-workers noticed immediately. The weight loss. The dark circles under her eyes. The way she moved through the office like a ghost. "You okay?" her manager asked, concern etched on her face. "I'm fine." But she wasn't fine. She was drowning. During her lunch break, she sat in her car and called her bank. She needed to know exactly how much money she had, how long she could survive. The number the automated voice gave her made her stomach drop. $3,000. That's all she had saved. $3,000 to cover rent, food, medical bills, baby supplies, and whatever emergencies might come. $3,000 between her and complete financial collapse. She did the math. If she was careful, extremely careful, she could stretch it for maybe 2 months. 3 if she got lucky. Then what? She called her landlord that afternoon. Asked if there was any flexibility on the rent. Any way to negotiate a lower payment, just for a few months, until she got back on her feet. "I'm sorry," he said, his tone polite but firm. "The rent is the rent." She hung up and sat in her car, staring at the steering wheel, feeling the walls close in. That night, she looked for cheaper apartments online. Smaller. Further from work. In neighborhoods she wouldn't have considered before. But even those were out of her range. Everything was too expensive. Everything required deposits she didn't have and credit checks she wasn't sure she'd pass. The 3rd week, she tried to apply for assistance. She sat in a government office for 4 hours, waiting in a plastic chair that made her back ache, surrounded by other people who looked just as tired and desperate as she felt. When her number was finally called, she sat across from a woman with kind eyes and an exhausted expression who asked her questions she didn't want to answer. "And the father of the child? He's not in the picture. Is he providing child support?" "Not yet. You'll need to file for it. We can help you with that." The idea of going through legal proceedings, of forcing him to acknowledge the baby he'd abandoned, made her want to disappear. But she had no choice. She left with a stack of paperwork and a vague promise that she might qualify for some aid. Maybe. If she submitted everything correctly. If her income met the thresholds. If she jumped through all the right hoops. It wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. The 4th week, she told her mother. She'd been avoiding the call. Her mother was traditional, conservative, the kind of woman who believed in marriage before children and staying together no matter what. She'd been so proud when her daughter moved in with him. So hopeful when she announced the pregnancy. Now she had to tell her it had all fallen apart. "He left," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "What do you mean he left?" "He met someone else. He's gone." Another silence. Longer this time. "You're 6 months pregnant." "I know. And he just left." "Yes." She could hear her mother breathing. Could feel the judgment, the disappointment, the inevitable lecture coming. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. You can't raise a baby alone." "I don't have a choice. You could come home. We'd help you." Home. A small town 3 hours away. Her childhood bedroom. Her parents' rules. Their scrutiny. Their constant reminders of how she'd failed. "I'll figure it out," she said. "You're being stubborn. I'm being realistic." The conversation ended badly. It always did. Her mother meant well, but her version of help came with strings attached. Strings she couldn't afford to be tangled in right now. The 5th week, she went to a prenatal appointment alone. The waiting room was full of couples. Husbands holding their wives' hands. Partners whispering excitedly about nursery colors and baby names. Everyone paired off. Everyone together. She sat by herself, filling out forms, checking boxes, trying not to cry. When the nurse called her name, she stood up and walked into the exam room, feeling every eye in the waiting room follow her. Judging. Pitying. The ultrasound technician was cheerful and chatty. "Dad couldn't make it today?" "No." "Oh well, he'll see the pictures." She didn't correct her. Didn't explain. Just nodded and stared at the screen. The baby was perfect. Healthy. Growing. Moving. Real. She watched the tiny heartbeat flickering on the monitor and felt something break open inside her chest. Love. Fierce and terrifying and overwhelming. This was her baby. Hers. And she was going to protect it no matter what. But protection required money. Stability. Resources she didn't have. The technician printed the ultrasound photos and handed them to her with a smile. Beautiful baby. Thank you. She walked out of the clinic, clutching the photos, and sat in her car. She looked at the image, the tiny profile, the little hands, the curve of the spine. She thought about texting the photo to him. Some desperate part of her thought maybe if he saw it, he'd change his mind. He'd remember. He'd come back. But she didn't. Because she knew he wouldn't. That night, she sat at the kitchen table and made a list. Things she needed. Things she could sell. Things she could cut from her budget. She sold her jewelry first. The necklace he'd given her for her birthday. The earrings she'd splurged on last Christmas. They didn't bring in much, but every dollar mattered. She cancelled subscriptions. Cut her grocery budget in half. Stopped eating out entirely. She picked up extra shifts at work even though her body ached and her feet swelled and every hour felt like climbing a mountain. But it still wasn't enough. One evening, her best friend came over, brought food, sat with her on the couch. You look exhausted. I am exhausted. Let me help you. You can't. Why not? Because this is my problem, not yours. Her friend grabbed her hand. You don't have to do this alone. But she did. That was the reality. Friends could bring food and offer comfort, but they couldn't pay her rent. They couldn't raise her child. They couldn't undo the fact that the person who should have been there wasn't. She was alone. And every day, that truth became heavier. She lay in bed that night, her hand on her belly, feeling the baby move, and whispered into the darkness. I won't let you down. I promise. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I will. The baby kicked in response. A small flutter. A reassurance. But promises don't pay bills. Hope doesn't put food on the table. And she was running out of both. 7 months pregnant now. The eviction notice came on a Thursday. Taped to her door. Official. Final. 30 days to vacate. She stood in the hallway, holding the paper, reading the words over and over like maybe they'd change if she stared long enough. But they didn't change. The landlord had been patient. More patient than he had to be. But patience has limits. And hers had just run out. 30 days. She had 30 days to find a new place, pack up her life, and move, all while 7 months pregnant and barely able to tie her own shoes. She walked inside, closed the door, and slid down against it until she was sitting on the floor. The paper crumpled in her hands. The baby kicked. Hard. Like it was protesting. Like it knew. I'm trying, she whispered. I'm trying so hard. But trying wasn't enough. Trying didn't pay rent. Trying didn't make apartments magically affordable or landlords suddenly generous. Trying was just exhausting. That night, she lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. Sleep didn't come anymore. Hadn't come in weeks. Every time she closed her eyes, her mind spiraled. Calculations. Worst-case scenarios. Dead ends. She was so tired. Not just physically, though her body ached in ways she didn't know were possible, but soul-tired. The kind of tired that makes you wonder if it's even worth getting up tomorrow. The baby moved inside her, rolling and stretching, oblivious to the chaos outside. She placed her hand on her belly and felt the little bumps and kicks. What am I going to do with you? She whispered into the darkness. The question hung there. Unanswered. Unanswerable. The next morning, she didn't get out of bed. Called in sick again. Her manager's voice on the phone was tight, annoyed. She was running out of sick days. Running out of excuses. Running out of everything. She spent the day in bed, scrolling through apartment listings she couldn't afford. Each one felt like a punch. Too expensive. Too far. Application fees she didn't have. Security deposits that might as well have been asking for $1 million. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. Have you thought about what I said? You can still come home. Home. Back to the place she'd spent her entire 20s trying to escape. Back to judgment and disappointment and I told you so looks over dinner. She typed out a response. Deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. Finally just turned off her phone. By the afternoon, the walls felt like they were closing in. The apartment, the place that had once felt like possibility, like the beginning of something good, now felt like a prison. Every corner held a memory. Every room whispered failure. She forced herself to get up, made it to the bathroom, looked at herself in the mirror. She didn't recognize the person staring back. Hollow eyes, pale skin, hair she hadn't washed in days. This wasn't her. This wasn't who she was supposed to be. She was supposed to be happy right now, glowing, preparing for the most beautiful moment of her life. Instead, she was drowning. The water in the sink ran cold. She splashed her face, gripped the edge of the counter, and felt her body shake. Not from cold. From everything. "I can't do this," she said out loud. The words felt dangerous. Like admitting defeat. Like giving permission to collapse. She walked back to the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and pulled out her phone. Turned it back on. The screen lit up with messages she didn't want to read. Her fingers hovered over her mother's contact. One call. That's all it would take. One call and she could go home. Let someone else carry this weight. Let someone else make the decisions. But going home meant admitting she'd failed. It meant proving everyone who doubted her right. It meant giving up the life she'd worked so hard to build. Even if that life was currently falling apart. She put the phone down. Stood up. Walked to the window. The city stretched out below her. So many people. So many lives. All of them moving forward while hers felt stuck. A woman walked by on the street below, pushing a stroller, laughing at something on her phone. She looked happy, put together. Like motherhood was easy. Like life was easy. Jealousy burned in her chest. Sharp and bitter. Why was it so hard for her? Why couldn't she figure this out? Other people did it. Other single mothers survived. Thrived even. So why did she feel like she was constantly drowning? The baby kicked again. Harder this time. Almost angry. She pressed her hand against her belly and felt tears sliding down her face. Silent. Heavy. "I don't know if I can be enough for you," she whispered. The admission broke something in her. The last wall she'd been holding up crumbled and she sank to the floor, back against the wall, sobbing. Not pretty crying. Not quiet crying. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep and primal. The kind that empties you out. She cried for the life she'd lost. For the man who'd left. For the future that had been stolen. For the fear that lived in her chest. For the exhaustion that never ended. For the baby who deserved better than this. When the tears finally stopped, she sat there on the floor, drained. Empty. The room was dark now. Evening had come without her noticing. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. She looked at her reflection in the window. Broken. Lost. Barely there. And in that moment, she understood something terrible. She was standing on the edge. One more push and she'd fall completely. One more bill. One more rejection. One more sleepless night. And she'd be done. The thought should have scared her. Instead, it felt almost peaceful. Her hand rested on her belly. The baby was quiet now. Sleeping maybe. Resting. She closed her eyes and let herself imagine what giving up would look like. Going home. Letting her parents take over. Becoming small again. Safe maybe. But small. It would be easier. But somewhere, deep down in a place she'd almost forgotten existed, something stirred. Not hope. Not yet. Just a flicker. A tiny, stubborn ember that refused to go out. She opened her eyes. The baby moved. Just a little. A reminder. She wasn't alone. She couldn't be selfish enough to quit. This wasn't just about her anymore. She took a breath. Deep. Shaky. But a breath. Okay, she whispered. Okay. She didn't know what came next. Didn't know how she'd survive tomorrow. Didn't know where she'd live or how she'd pay for anything. But she knew one thing. She wasn't done yet. Not quite. But something inside me was still breathing. And as long as that was true, she had to keep going. The decision came on a Friday morning. She woke up at dawn, not because she'd slept well, but because her body refused to rest anymore. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that makes every thought louder. She sat up slowly, her back aching, her belly heavy. 8 months now. 4 weeks until her due date. 4 weeks until everything changed forever. She walked to the bathroom, splashed water on her face, and looked at herself in the mirror. The same hollow eyes. The same exhaustion. But something felt different today. She couldn't name it yet. In the kitchen, she made tea. Not coffee. She'd given that up months ago to save money. She sat at the small table, the one they'd bought together at a yard sale, and stared at the pile of papers in front of her. Bills. Notices. Forms she didn't understand. Her phone sat next to the papers, screen dark, silent. She picked it up. Unlocked it. Stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she opened her notes app and started typing. Not a to-do list. Not a budget. Just words. Thoughts. A stream of consciousness that had been building inside her for weeks. I am scared. I am broke. I am alone. But I am still here. And this baby is still coming. And I have to figure this out because no one else is going to do it for me. She read the words back to herself. They felt true, raw, real. Then she kept typing. I can't control what he did. I can't make him come back. I can't change the past. But I can control what I do next. The baby kicked. Hard. Like it was agreeing. She set down the phone and looked around the apartment. Really looked at it. The half-assembled crib. The boxes of baby clothes from friends. The stack of bills. The eviction notice still sitting on the counter. This was her reality. Broken. Messy. Overwhelming. But it was hers. She stood up. Walked to the crib. Picked up the instruction manual she'd been avoiding for weeks. Sat down on the floor and spread out the pieces. It took her 3 hours. Her back hurt. Her fingers ached. She had to take breaks every 20 minutes because bending over made her dizzy. But she built it. Piece by piece. Screw by screw. Step by step. When it was done, she stood back and looked at it. A crib. Sturdy. Real. Waiting. It wasn't much. But it was something. She pulled out her phone again and searched for something she'd been too proud to look for before. Government assistance programs. Single mother resources. Emergency housing. Page after page of options she'd ignored because accepting help felt like admitting defeat. But defeat was staying on the floor crying. Defeat was giving up. This was survival. She clicked on a link. Temporary assistance for needy families. Read through the requirements. She qualified. Barely, but she qualified. She filled out the application right there on her phone. Name. Address. Income. Status. Pregnancy. Need. Every question felt like stripping away pride. Every answer felt like exposing weakness. But she kept going. When she hit submit, she felt something shift inside her chest. Not relief. Not hope. Just movement. Forward movement. She searched for more. WIC. Medicaid. Childcare assistance. Housing vouchers. Food programs. Things she'd never thought she'd need. Things her pride had kept her from even considering. She applied for all of them. Then she made a list. Not of things she couldn't do, but of things she could. She could sell more of her belongings. She could pick up more shifts until she physically couldn't anymore. She could ask her friends for help without feeling ashamed. She could move to a smaller place. She could accept that this wasn't the life she'd planned, but it was the life she had. That afternoon, she posted items for sale online. Furniture she didn't need. Clothes that didn't fit. Books she'd read. Anything that could bring in money. Her phone started buzzing almost immediately. People wanted to buy things. $20 here. $50 there. Small amounts that added up. She met a woman at a coffee shop to sell a lamp. The woman was kind, chatty, asked about the pregnancy. When are you due? 4 weeks. How exciting. Is this your first? Yes. Are you ready? She almost laughed. Ready. She wasn't ready at all. But she said, getting there. The woman smiled, handed her the cash, and said something that stuck. You'll figure it out. We all do. Walking back to her car, she thought about those words. We all do. Like it was a fact. Like survival wasn't a question of if but how. That evening, she called her best friend. I need help. 3 words she'd been avoiding for months. Her friend didn't hesitate. What do you need? Everything. I need help packing. I need help finding a place. I need help not falling apart. I'm there. Tomorrow. What time? She felt tears sting her eyes, but they were different this time. Not tears of despair. Tears of relief. Of gratitude. Of realizing she didn't have to carry everything alone. Thank you. That's what I'm here for. That night, she sat in the nursery, the tiny corner of the bedroom she'd designated for the baby. The crib stood against the wall. She'd put a sheet on the mattress, folded tiny clothes and placed them in the drawers. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't what she'd imagined. But it was real. She placed her hand on her belly and felt the baby move. I don't have it all figured out, she whispered. I don't know how this is going to work. But I promise you, I'm not giving up. The baby kicked in response. She smiled. Small. Tired. But real. This wasn't the turning point she'd been waiting for. There was no dramatic revelation. No sudden windfall. No knight in shining armor. Just a woman sitting on the floor of a tiny apartment, deciding that even though everything was falling apart, she was still going to fight. The next morning, she woke up early again. But this time, she got up with purpose. She answered emails about items for sale. She checked the status of her assistance applications. She called a friend about cheap apartments they might know about. She made a list of food pantries nearby. Small steps. Baby steps. But steps forward. And somewhere deep inside, beneath all the fear and exhaustion and uncertainty, something had shifted. She wasn't waiting to be saved anymore. She was saving herself. One decision at a time. One day at a time. One breath at a time. And that was enough. For now, it was enough. 3 weeks later, things started to shift. Small things. Barely noticeable at first. But shift nonetheless. The first letter came on a Monday. She'd almost stopped checking the mail because it was always bad news. Bills. Reminders. Notices. But this envelope was different. Official but not threatening. She opened it standing in the hallway, her hands shaking slightly. Congratulations. Your application for TANF has been approved. She read it 3 times. Approved. The word felt foreign. Like something that happened to other people, not her. It wasn't much money. But it was something. A buffer. A cushion between her and complete collapse. She called the number listed and set up the direct deposit. The woman on the phone was kind, efficient, told her the funds would appear in her account within 5 business days. When she hung up, she stood there in the hallway, staring at the letter, and felt something she hadn't felt in months. Relief. 2 days later, another letter. WIC approved. Food assistance for her and the baby once it was born. nutritional support, formula if she needed it. One less thing to worry about. She taped both letters to the refrigerator. Small victories documented. Proof that she was moving forward. Her best friend came over that weekend with boxes and packing tape. They spent the afternoon sorting through the apartment, deciding what to keep and what to let go. "You don't need this," her friend said, holding up a decorative pillow. "I know. Or this." A vase they'd never used. "Sell it." They worked methodically, creating piles. Keep. Sell. Donate. Each decision felt like shedding weight. By evening, half the apartment was packed. Her friend ordered pizza, her treat, and they sat on the floor surrounded by boxes, eating and talking. "I'm proud of you," her friend said suddenly. She looked up, surprised. "For what?" "For not giving up." The words landed softly but powerfully. She hadn't thought of it that way. She was just surviving. But maybe survival was its own kind of victory. "I didn't have a choice." "You always have a choice. You chose to keep fighting." She nodded, feeling emotion rise in her throat. "Thank you for being here." "Always." That night, lying in bed, she felt the baby move. Strong kicks now. The baby was running out of room, preparing for the world. Soon. So soon. She placed her hand on her belly and whispered, "We're going to be okay." The following week, she found an apartment. Not her dream apartment. Not even close. It was smaller, older, in a neighborhood that felt rough around the edges. But it was affordable. Barely, but affordable. The landlord was an older man with kind eyes who didn't ask too many questions when she explained her situation. He looked at her belly, looked at her face, and said, "First and last month, no security deposit. You can pay me back when you get on your feet." She wanted to cry. Instead, she shook his hand and said, "Thank you. I won't let you down. I know you won't." She signed the lease that day. Move-in date, 2 weeks. 1 week before her due date. Cutting it close, but it would work. That evening, she celebrated by buying herself a coffee. A real coffee. Her first in months. She sat in her car in the parking lot, drinking it slowly, savoring every sip, feeling like maybe, just maybe, the universe was starting to tilt back in her direction. Her phone buzzed. A text from a woman who'd bought some furniture the week before. "Hey, I mentioned you to my boss. We're looking for someone to do remote data entry. Part-time. Flexible hours. Interested?" She stared at the message. Remote work. Flexible. She could do it from home with the baby. She typed back immediately. "Yes. Absolutely. Thank you." Within an hour, she had an email with an application link. She filled it out that night, sitting at the kitchen table, hands moving quickly over the keyboard, hope building with every answer. 2 days later, she got the job. It wasn't glamorous. The pay was modest. But it was income. Real, steady income she could do from home. When she called her friend to tell her, she couldn't keep the excitement out of her voice. "I got a job. Oh my God. That's amazing. It's not much, but it's everything. I'm so happy for you." She was happy too. Actually happy. The kind of happiness that felt fragile and precious, like something she had to protect. The doctor's appointment that week was different too. She walked in alone, like always. But this time, she didn't feel the same weight. The same shame. She was just another pregnant woman, doing her best, preparing for her baby. The doctor checked her progress. "Everything looks great. Baby's healthy. You're measuring perfectly. 1 more month." 1 more month, she repeated. It felt real now. Imminent. Terrifying and exciting in equal measure. On the way out, she stopped at a baby store. Not to browse. To buy. She had money now. Not a lot, but enough. She bought diapers. Wipes. A few onesies. Tiny socks. A soft blanket. At the register, The cashier smiled at her belly. When are you due? 4 weeks. Exciting. Is this your first? Yes. You'll be great. Such a simple statement. But it landed like a blessing. She drove home with the bags in the back seat, feeling like she was finally building something real. Not just surviving. Actually building. That weekend, she started packing in earnest. Her friend came back with reinforcements. 2 other friends who showed up with coffee and snacks and determination. They packed the entire apartment in one day. Labeled boxes. Dismantled furniture. Wrapped breakables. Laughed and joked and made it feel less like an ending and more like a transition. At the end of the day, standing in the nearly empty living room, one of her friends hugged her tight. You're going to make it. You know that, right? She nodded. I'm starting to believe it. The move happened on a Saturday. Her friends showed up with a borrowed truck and muscle and hours of their time. They carried boxes up 3 flights of stairs. Assembled furniture. Hung curtains. Made jokes about her nesting instincts kicking in. By evening, the new apartment was livable. Not decorated. Not perfect. But livable. She stood in the small nursery corner, really just a section of her bedroom, and looked at the crib, the changing table, the tiny clothes folded in the drawer. This was it. Her new life. Smaller. Simpler. But hers. Her friends left after ordering dinner and making her promise to call if she needed anything. When the door closed and she was alone, she walked through the apartment slowly, taking it all in. It smelled like fresh paint and possibility. The windows faced east, so morning light would stream in. The neighborhood was quiet. Safe enough. She sat on the couch, the same one from the old apartment, and felt the baby move. Welcome home, she whispered. That night, she slept better than she had in months. Her body still ached. Her mind still worried. But underneath it all was something new. Hope. Not the naive hope of the beginning. Not the desperate hope of someone drowning. But earned hope. The kind that comes from surviving impossible things and realizing you're stronger than you thought. The next morning, she woke up to sunlight streaming through the window. She made tea, sat at the small kitchen table, and opened her laptop. Her first day of remote work started in an hour. She had groceries in the fridge, thanks to Wick. She had rent covered for 2 months. She had friends who showed up when it mattered. She had a plan. It wasn't the plan she'd imagined, but it was a plan. And as she sat there, feeling the baby kick, watching the sun rise over her new neighborhood, she thought about how far she'd come. From the floor of an empty apartment, broken and alone, to this moment. Scared still. Uncertain still. But fighting. I promised myself I wouldn't break, she whispered to herself. And she hadn't. She'd bent. She'd nearly shattered. But she was still here. And that was enough. The baby arrived on a Tuesday morning. 37 hours of labor. Exhaustion that went beyond anything she'd ever experienced. Pain that stripped her down to something raw and primal. But when they placed that tiny screaming human on her chest, everything else disappeared. Her daughter. She had a daughter. Small. Perfect. With dark hair and eyes that looked straight through her. In that moment, holding her baby for the first time, she understood what it meant to love something more than yourself. She's beautiful, the nurse said, smiling. She couldn't speak. Could only stare at this miracle she'd somehow created. This life that had grown inside her through all the chaos and fear and uncertainty. Her best friend was there, had been there through all 37 hours, holding her hand, coaching her breathing, never leaving. Now she stood beside the bed, tears streaming down her face. You did it. I did it, she whispered back. The first week was a blur. Sleepless nights. Endless feeding. Learning how to be a mother with no manual and no partner. Her friends took shifts, bringing food, doing laundry, holding the baby so she could shower or sleep for an hour. She was tired. So tired her bones ached. But she was happy too. in a way she hadn't expected. Every time she looked at her daughter, she felt something shift inside her chest. Purpose. Love. Fierce protective instinct. This was what she'd been fighting for. This small human who depended on her completely. 3 weeks postpartum, she was sitting on the couch, nursing the baby at 3 in the morning, half asleep, when her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She ignored it. Probably spam. Or a notification she didn't care about. It buzzed again. And again. Annoyed, she reached for it with one hand, careful not to disturb the baby. A text message. From a number she deleted months ago but still recognized immediately. Her heart stopped. Him. Hey. Can we talk? She stared at the words. 3 simple words that felt like grenades. Can we talk? After 7 months of silence. 7 months of abandonment. 7 months of her struggling alone while he lived his new life with his new girlfriend. Now he wanted to talk. Her hands shook. The baby fussed, sensing her tension. She adjusted her grip, tried to steady her breathing. Another message appeared. I know it's late, but I've been thinking about everything. About you. About the baby. I made a mistake. A mistake. Rage flooded through her. Hot and immediate. He made a mistake. Like leaving her pregnant was something he'd accidentally done. Like destroying their life together was just an oops. She wanted to throw the phone across the room. Wanted to scream. But the baby was in her arms, peaceful now, eyes closed, tiny hand wrapped around her finger. She couldn't fall apart. Not now. Not when she'd worked so hard to put herself back together. Another message. I want to see her. See you. Can I come by? Her breath caught. He wanted to see the baby. The baby he'd abandoned before she was even born. The baby he'd walked away from without a second thought. She looked down at her daughter. So small. So innocent. So completely unaware that her father had just decided, 7 months too late, that maybe he wanted to be involved after all. What was she supposed to do? Part of her wanted to tell him no. To block his number. To protect her daughter from someone who'd already proven he couldn't be trusted. But another part of her, the part that remembered who he used to be, the part that still carried scars from loving him, wondered if maybe he really had changed. If maybe he deserved a chance. She set the phone down without responding. Finished feeding the baby. Burped her gently. Laid her in the bassinet and watched her sleep. Then she picked up the phone again and stared at the messages. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. Type something. Anything. Tell him to disappear. Tell him it's too late. Tell him he has no right to come back now. But the words wouldn't come. Because despite everything, despite all the pain and abandonment and betrayal, a tiny part of her had always wondered if he'd come back. If he'd realize what he'd lost and try to make it right. Now he was. And she didn't know what to do. The next morning, she called her best friend. He texted. What? When? Last night. He wants to see the baby. Silence on the other end. Then carefully. What did you say? Nothing yet. What do you want to say? That was the question, wasn't it? What did she want? She wanted to be angry. She was angry. But she also wanted her daughter to have a father. Wanted to believe that people could change. Wanted to not carry this alone anymore. I don't know. You don't have to decide right now. But she did. Because he was waiting for an answer. And every hour she didn't respond felt like a decision in itself. That afternoon, she sat at the kitchen table and typed out a response. Deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. Finally, she settled on something simple. We need to talk first. Without the baby. Coffee tomorrow. She hit send before she could change her mind. His response came immediately. Yes. Thank you. What time? They made plans. A coffee shop. Neutral territory. Midday when she could get her friend to watch the baby for an hour. She spent the rest of the day anxious, rehearsing what she'd say, how she'd act, whether she'd be strong or whether she'd fall apart the moment she saw him. The next day came too fast. She dressed carefully. Nothing fancy. Jeans and a sweater. But she put on makeup, brushed her hair, wanted to look like she had it together even if she didn't. Her friend came over to watch the baby. "You've got this," she said, hugging her tight. "Say what you need to say. Don't let him off easy." She nodded, grabbed her keys, walked out to her car. The drive to the coffee shop felt surreal, like she was watching herself from outside her body, going to meet the man who'd destroyed her, the man who'd left her pregnant and alone, the man who now wanted back in. She parked, sat in the car for a moment, took a deep breath. Then she walked inside. He was already there, sitting at a table in the corner. He looked different, thinner maybe, tired. When he saw her, he stood up, nervous energy radiating off him. "Hi. Hi." They sat down, awkward, tense. So much history and hurt sitting between them. "Thank you for meeting me," he said. She nodded, didn't trust herself to speak yet. "I know I don't deserve it. I know He stopped, looked down at his hands. I messed up so badly." She waited, let him squirm. "I was scared. When you told me you were pregnant, I panicked. And instead of dealing with it, I ran. I met someone who didn't come with responsibility, and I convinced myself that was what I wanted. And now," her voice came out steadier than she felt, "now I realize I made the biggest mistake of my life. Because you were everything. And I threw it away." She felt tears prick her eyes but refused to let them fall. "You didn't just throw me away. You threw away your daughter." He flinched. "I know. And I want to fix it. I want to be there. I want to be her dad. It's been 7 months. I know. 7 months where I had to figure out everything alone. Where I almost lost everything. Where I went to every appointment by myself. Where I gave birth without you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." She looked at him. Really looked at him. And she saw it. Regret. Genuine regret. But was regret enough? And then the phone rang. Her phone. Her friend's name on the screen. She answered, heart suddenly pounding. "Hey, is everything? The baby's fine. But there's someone here. A woman. She says she's looking for him. Says she's his girlfriend." The world tilted. She looked up at him, phone still pressed to her ear. "Your girlfriend is at my apartment." His face went white. She hung up and stood, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Your girlfriend is at my apartment," she repeated, her voice cold. "Looking for you." He opened his mouth, closed it. The color drained from his face. "I can explain." "Don't." She grabbed her purse, started walking toward the door. He followed, panic in his voice. "Please, just let me." She spun around, and the look on her face stopped him mid-sentence. "You told me you made a mistake. You told me you wanted to be there for our daughter. But you didn't tell me you were still with her. It's complicated." "No. It's not. You wanted to have both. You wanted to play dad while keeping your new life intact. That's not. Were you ever going to tell her about the baby?" His silence was the answer. She laughed. A bitter, sharp sound. "You're unbelievable." She walked out of the coffee shop and got in her car. He followed her into the parking lot, calling her name, but she didn't stop, didn't look back. The drive home felt surreal. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tight her knuckles turned white. Anger burned in her chest, hot and righteous. How dare he? How dare he come back with his apologies and his regrets when he hadn't even done the bare minimum of being honest? When she pulled into her apartment complex, She saw a woman standing near her building. Mid-20s. Pretty. Arms crossed. Looking confused and annoyed. Her. The woman who'd been the reason for everything. The woman he'd chosen over his own family. She parked and got out. The woman turned, saw her, and her expression shifted from annoyance to uncertainty. Are you the one he was with before? Before. Like she was ancient history. Like she hadn't been pregnant with his child while he was falling for someone new. I'm the mother of his daughter, she said flatly. The woman's eyes widened. His what? And there it was. The moment of truth. He didn't tell you. Tell me what? But the woman's voice had gone small. Like she already knew. He left me when I was 6 months pregnant. 3 weeks ago, I gave birth to his daughter. And this morning, he texted me saying he wanted to be involved. The woman took a step back, her face crumpling. No. That's not possible. It's very possible. She's upstairs right now. The woman looked at her, then at the building, then back at her. Processing. Calculating. Realizing. He told me you were just someone he dated. That it ended badly, but it was over. It was over when he abandoned me while I was pregnant with his child. The woman's hands went to her face. Oh my God. Oh my God. She should have felt satisfaction. Watching this woman realize the man she'd been with was a liar. Watching everything crumble. But instead, she just felt tired. I didn't know, the woman whispered. I swear I didn't know. I believe you. And she did. Because she recognized that look. That devastation. That feeling of the ground disappearing beneath your feet. She'd worn that same expression 7 months ago when he told her he was leaving. The woman looked up, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry. For everything. I didn't. If I had known. It's not your fault. It feels like it is. It's his fault. He lied to both of us. A car pulled into the parking lot. Fast. Reckless. His car. He got out, saw both of them standing there, and froze. Sarah, he said, looking at the girlfriend. What are you doing here? What am I doing here? Her voice was shrill, breaking. You have a baby. A baby you never told me about. I was going to. When? When were you going to tell me? After you played happy family behind my back. It's not like that. Then what is it like? She stepped toward him, fury replacing devastation. Tell me. Explain how you have a 3-week-old daughter and I'm just finding out now. He looked between them. Trapped. Cornered. I made mistakes. Mistakes. Sarah's voice rose. You didn't make mistakes. You lied. You lied to her. You lied to me. You're still lying. She watched him scramble. Watched him try to find words that would fix this. Watched him realize there weren't any. This was justice. Not screaming. Not revenge. Just truth. Simple, devastating truth. I can't do this, Sarah said, her voice breaking. She looked at her, at the woman he'd abandoned. I'm sorry. For all of it. Then she turned and walked away. Got in her car. Drove off. He stood there in the parking lot, watching her leave, looking smaller somehow. Diminished. He turned to her. Please. Can we just? No. I want to see my daughter. Then you'll do it the right way. Through the courts. With child support and custody agreements and all the legal things you should have done 7 months ago. I don't want it to be like that. You don't get to decide anymore. You gave up that right when you walked out. She could see him trying to find an angle. A way back in. But there wasn't one. I'm sorry, he said finally. For everything. I know you are. But sorry doesn't change anything. She walked past him toward her building. He called after her. Can I at least see a picture? She stopped. Turned. For a moment, She considered saying no, keeping even that small thing from him. But spite wouldn't serve anyone. She pulled out her phone, showed him the most recent photo. Her daughter, sleeping, tiny fist curled against her cheek. His eyes filled with tears. She's beautiful. She is. She looks like me, she finished. She looks like me. He nodded. What's her name? That's not something you get to know yet. You want to be in her life? Prove it. File for paternity. Set up child support. Show up when you say you will. Be reliable. I will. I promise. Your promises don't mean anything to me anymore. Show me through actions. She walked away then, climbed the stairs to her apartment, let herself in. Her friend was on the couch with the baby, who was awake and alert, looking around with curious eyes. What happened? She sat down, took her daughter into her arms, felt that familiar weight and warmth. Justice happened. She didn't feel triumphant, didn't feel vindicated, just felt at peace. Because she'd realized something standing in that parking lot watching him squirm and lie and fail. She didn't need him. Not his apologies. Not his money. Not his presence. She'd built a life without him. A small life, a hard life, but hers. And her daughter would grow up knowing that her mother fought for her. That when everything fell apart, she didn't give up. That was enough. That night, she sat in the nursery corner, rocking her daughter to sleep, and whispered, "You don't need him either. You have me. And I promise you, that will always be enough." The baby yawned, eyes fluttering closed. Outside, the city hummed. Life continued. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new struggles. But tonight, in this moment, holding her daughter, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Whole. Not because he'd come back, but because she'd realized she didn't need him to. Justice wasn't him suffering. Justice was her thriving despite him. And that was the sweetest victory of all. 6 months passed. The baby, Emma, she'd named her, grew, changed, smiled, laughed, filled the apartment with sounds that used to be silence. Life settled into a rhythm. Not easy. Never easy. But manageable. The remote job became full-time. The assistance programs kept them afloat. Her friends remained constants, showing up with groceries and babysitting and the kind of love that doesn't need to be asked for. He filed for paternity, set up child support. It came every month, on time, deposited automatically. Cold, transactional, but reliable. He asked to see Emma, through lawyers. Official requests with proposed schedules and supervised visits. She said no at first. The wound was too fresh. The betrayal too raw. She couldn't stand the thought of him holding the baby he'd abandoned, playing dad when he'd proven he didn't know what that word meant. But Emma kept growing. And as she grew, she started looking more and more like him. His eyes, his smile, his expressions. And something in her softened. Not for him. For Emma. Because Emma deserved to know her father. Even if he was flawed. Even if he'd failed. Even if forgiveness felt impossible. One evening, she sat in the nursery corner, rocking Emma to sleep, and realized something that had been building quietly inside her for months. Holding on to anger was exhausting. It didn't hurt him. It only hurt her. Every time she thought about what he'd done, every time she replayed the abandonment, every time she felt that familiar rage, it stole energy she needed for Emma. Forgiveness wasn't about him deserving it. It was about her deserving peace. She called her mother that night. They hadn't spoken much since Emma was born. The relationship was still strained, still complicated, but distance had softened some edges. Mom. Hi, sweetheart. How's my grandbaby? They talked about Emma for a while. Milestones. New sounds. The way she'd started reaching for everything. Then, quietly, she said, "He wants to meet her." A pause. What do you think? I think I'm tired of being angry. That's not the same as forgiving him. I know, but maybe it's a start. Her mother was quiet for a moment. Then softly, "You've become so strong. I'm proud of you." The words landed gently, healing something she didn't know needed healing. "Thank you. Whatever you decide, you're doing what's best for Emma. And that's all that matters." After they hung up, she sat with those words. Doing what's best for Emma. That had been her compass through everything. And it needed to be her compass now. She called her lawyer the next morning. "I want to set up supervised visitation. Once a month to start. 1 hour. At the family center." "Are you sure?" "No. But I'm doing it anyway." The first visit happened on a Saturday. She drove Emma to the family center, a neutral space with toys and soft lighting and staff who monitored everything. Her hands shook on the steering wheel. Emma babbled happily in the back seat, oblivious. He was already there when they arrived. Standing in the lobby, nervous, his hands shoved in his pockets. When he saw Emma, his face crumpled. "She's so big. She's 6 months old." He nodded. Couldn't take his eyes off her. The supervisor led them to a room. Explained the rules. No leaving the space. No discussion of custody. Just time with the baby. She sat Emma on a blanket on the floor. Emma immediately grabbed a toy and put it in her mouth. He sat down across from her, tentative, like he didn't know what to do. "Can I hold her?" She hesitated, then nodded. He reached out carefully, lifted Emma into his arms. The baby looked at him curiously, studying his face with serious eyes. "Hi," he whispered. "Hi, Emma. I'm your dad." Something in her chest twisted. Not anger. Not pain. Something softer. Sadder. Emma reached up and grabbed his nose. He laughed. Surprised. Delighted. The sound was so familiar it hurt. She watched him with their daughter. Watched him talk to her softly, bounce her gently, make silly faces that made Emma smile. And she realized something. He wasn't a monster. He was just a man who'd made terrible choices. A man who'd been scared and selfish and weak. But he was also Emma's father. And Emma deserved to know him. Deserved to make her own judgments one day about who he was. The hour passed quickly. When it was over, he handed Emma back reluctantly. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick, "for letting me see her." She nodded. Didn't trust herself to speak. As she was buckling Emma into the car seat, he appeared beside her. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I hurt you in ways I can't fix. But I want you to know. I'm sorry. Truly. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be the father she deserves." She looked at him. Really looked at him. And saw genuine remorse. Not manipulation. Not performance. Just regret. "I don't forgive you," she said quietly. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I'm choosing to let go of the anger. For me. For Emma." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "That's more than I deserve." "Yes, it is." She got in the car and drove away. That night, Emma slept peacefully in her crib. She stood watching her daughter, feeling something shift inside her chest. Lighter. Freer. Forgiveness wasn't a gift she gave him. It was a gift she gave herself. She walked to the window. The city stretched out below, alive with lights and movement. Somewhere out there, people were falling in love. People were having their hearts broken. People were fighting battles no one could see. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago. The one who believed in fairy tales and forever. Who thought love was enough. Who'd never imagined she'd be here, alone with a baby, rebuilding a life from ruins. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger. Someone who knew that survival wasn't pretty or poetic. It was messy and hard and required showing up every single day even when you didn't want to. She'd learned that love, real love, wasn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It was about staying. About choosing someone even when it was difficult. About sacrifice. She'd learned that you could be broken and still keep going. That rock bottom wasn't the end. That sometimes the only way forward was through. She'd learned that asking for help wasn't weakness. That community mattered. That no one survives alone. And she'd learned that the person you become in the aftermath of betrayal, that's who you really are. She was enough. Not because someone chose her, but because she chose herself. Emma stirred in her crib, making soft sounds. She walked over, placed her hand on her daughter's back, felt the rise and fall of breathing. "I forgive him," she whispered into the darkness. "Not for him. For us." And in that moment, the weight she'd been carrying for months finally lifted. The past would always be there. The pain would always be part of her story. But it didn't have to define her future. She was free. Not because he'd apologized. Not because he'd come back. But because she'd decided that anger was too heavy to carry anymore. And freedom, real freedom, was choosing peace over justice, growth over bitterness, love over hate. That was the lesson. That was what she'd teach Emma one day. That forgiveness isn't about letting people off the hook. It's about unhooking yourself from pain. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go. 2 years later. Morning light streams through the kitchen window, warm and golden. The apartment is small but lived in. Toys scattered across the floor. Children's books stacked on the coffee table. A tiny pair of shoes by the door. She stands at the counter, making coffee. Real coffee this time. The smell fills the kitchen, rich and familiar. On the counter sits a mug. Not his mug. That one is long gone, donated months ago with the rest of the things she didn't need anymore. This mug is new. Bright yellow. With a handprint pressed into the ceramic. Emma's handprint from daycare, glazed and permanent. She wraps her hands around it and feels the warmth seep into her palms. Behind her, Emma toddles into the kitchen, hair wild from sleep, dragging her favorite stuffed rabbit by one ear. "Mama." She turns, smiles. "Good morning, sunshine." Emma reaches up, wanting to be held. She scoops her daughter into her arms, balances her on one hip while taking a sip of coffee with the other hand. This is her morning ritual now. Coffee and cuddles. Cartoons and breakfast. The chaos and beauty of motherhood. The apartment is different from the one where everything fell apart. Smaller. Cheaper. But it's theirs. Every inch of it earned through late nights and early mornings and sheer determination not to give up. The walls are covered with Emma's artwork. Crayon scribbles that look like nothing and everything. A calendar with appointments marked in her handwriting. Pediatrician. Daycare events. Her own work deadlines. On the refrigerator, magnets hold photographs. Emma at 6 months. Emma's first birthday. Emma at the park, covered in mud, laughing. And one photo of just her, taken last month by a friend who insisted she needed to remember herself too. In it, she's smiling. A real smile. The kind that reaches her eyes. She looks at that photo now and barely recognizes the woman from 2 years ago. The one who sat on the floor of an empty apartment, broken and alone, wondering if she'd survive. She'd not only survived. She'd built something beautiful from the ruins. Emma squirms, wanting down. She sets her on the floor and watches as her daughter runs to the living room window. The same window where she once stood, pregnant and terrified, watching the city move on without her. Now Emma presses her tiny hands against the glass, pointing at something outside. "Bird, Mama. Bird." She walks over, looks where Emma is pointing. A small bird perched on the fire escape railing. Nothing special. Just a bird. But Emma is delighted, bouncing on her toes, laughing. She kneels beside her daughter and watches the bird with her, finding joy in small things. That's what Emma has taught her. That happiness doesn't come from perfect circumstances or fairy tale endings. It comes from moments like this. Morning coffee and birds on the fire escape. Her phone buzzes on the counter. A text from her best friend. Coffee later? My treat. She smiles. Types back. Yes. Bring Emma something ridiculous. Her friend responds immediately with a string of emojis and always. Her life is full now. Not of grand adventures or dramatic romance, but of friendship and community and the kind of love that shows up with groceries and babysitting and texts that say, thinking of you. She walks back to the kitchen, rinses out her mug, sets it on the drying rack. The yellow one with Emma's handprint. Her new symbol. Her new ritual. The door to the apartment, the one that had once represented endings and abandonment, now represents something different. It's the door Emma runs to when Daddy arrives for his supervised visits. The door friends knock on bringing laughter and wine after bedtime. The door she walks through every morning feeling capable and strong. She thinks about him sometimes. About the life they were supposed to have. About the version of herself that believed love was enough. But she doesn't mourn it anymore. That life wouldn't have made her this person. Wouldn't have taught her that she was strong enough to rebuild. That she could be both broken and whole. That rock bottom wasn't an ending but a foundation. Emma tugs on her sleeve. Hungry, Mama. Pancakes. Yes. She pulls out the ingredients. Emma drags her step stool to the counter, climbs up, demands to help. They make pancakes together. Messy, chaotic, flour everywhere. Emma's laughter fills the kitchen like music. And in that moment, standing in her small kitchen covered in flour with her daughter, she understands something profound. This is the life she was meant to live. Not the easy one. Not the one she'd planned. But this one. The hard one. The one she'd fought for every single day. She'd promised herself she wouldn't break. And she hadn't. She'd bent and cracked and nearly shattered. But she'd held together. And from those cracks, light had gotten in. Light that showed her who she really was. What she was capable of. How much love she could hold. The pancakes burn slightly on the edges. Emma doesn't care. She eats them with syrup dripping down her chin, grinning. She takes a photo. Another moment to remember. Another piece of proof that they made it. After breakfast, they get dressed. Emma insists on wearing mismatched socks and a tutu over her jeans. She doesn't argue. Pick your battles. That's another lesson she's learned. They walk to the park, hand in hand. Emma chatters constantly about everything and nothing. She listens, responds, laughs at her daughter's observations about the world. At the park, Emma runs toward the swings. She pushes her higher and higher, watching her daughter's face light up with joy. A woman on the bench nearby smiles at her. How old? 2.5. Beautiful age. Exhausting, but beautiful. She laughs. Very exhausting. First child. Yes. It gets easier. And harder. But mostly just different. She nods. Appreciates the honesty. The camaraderie of motherhood. That evening, after Emma is asleep, she sits in the small nursery corner and looks around. The crib is almost too small now. Emma will need a toddler bed soon. Everything keeps changing. Growing. She thinks about the woman who assembled this crib 2 years ago. 7 months pregnant. Alone. Desperate. Determined. She wishes she could tell that woman what she knows now. That the pain wouldn't last forever. That she was stronger than she thought. That the life she was about to live would be hard but worth it. That her daughter would be the greatest gift she'd ever receive. But maybe that woman already knew. Maybe that's why she kept going. She walks to the window one last time before bed. Looks out at the city. The lights. The movement. The endless possibility. And she whispers into the darkness, to no one and everyone. I made it. We made it. The door closes softly behind her as she heads to bed. But this time, the silence doesn't hurt. It feels like peace. If you're still here, still listening, it means something in this story touched you. Maybe you've been where she was, standing in the wreckage of broken promises, wondering if you'll survive. Maybe you're there right now, holding yourself together with sheer will and the belief that tomorrow might be different. Or maybe you know someone who is. Someone who smiles, but you can see the exhaustion behind their eyes. Someone who's carrying more than anyone should have to carry alone. This story isn't unique. Thousands of women live versions of it every day. Abandoned while pregnant. Left to rebuild alone. Fighting battles no one sees while the world moves on around them. But here's what makes each story remarkable. They survive. They show up. They choose to keep going even when every logical reason says to quit. She could have given up. There were moments when giving up would have been easier. When the weight of single motherhood, financial collapse, and emotional devastation felt too heavy to carry forward. But she didn't. And neither do countless others. They wake up. They feed their babies. They work impossible hours. They cry in bathroom stalls during lunch breaks. They apply for assistance they never thought they'd need. They ask for help even when pride screams against it. They rebuild from nothing. And they do it all with a fierce love that refuses to be defeated by circumstances. If this is your story, know this: you are not alone. The isolation you feel is real, but it's not the whole truth. There are communities of women who understand, who've walked this path, who will hold space for your pain and celebrate your victories. Reach out. Ask for help. Accept that needing support isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And if this isn't your story but you recognized someone in it, do something. Check on that friend who's been quieter than usual. Offer to watch her kids so she can sleep. Bring groceries without being asked. Show up in the small ways that make survival possible. Because here's the truth that stories like this teach us. We survive through community. Not through grand gestures or perfect solutions, but through people who show up. Who see our struggle and say, I'm here. This woman's story, this survival, wasn't hers alone. It was built on friends who packed boxes and brought dinner. Strangers who approved assistance applications. Neighbors who smiled kindly in waiting rooms. A landlord who showed mercy. Small acts of humanity that added up to survival. That's the lesson underneath everything else. That we need each other. That strength isn't about doing it alone. It's about having the courage to accept help and the grace to offer it when we can. If this story moved you, don't just move on to the next video. Sit with it for a moment. Think about what it means. Think about who might need to hear it. Share it with someone who's struggling. Not because it provides easy answers, it doesn't, but because sometimes knowing that other people have survived the unsurvivable makes your own survival feel possible. And if you're the one who's barely holding on right now, hear this: you will make it. Not because it's easy. Not because you have all the answers. But because you have more strength than you know. That woman sitting on the floor of an empty apartment 2 years ago couldn't have imagined where she'd be today. Couldn't have seen past the immediate pain to the life waiting on the other side. But she made it. One decision at a time. One day at a time. One breath at a time. And so will you. The story doesn't end with perfection. It ends with survival. With building something meaningful from ruins. With discovering that broken things can heal into something even stronger. That's not just her story. It's the story of anyone who's ever faced the impossible and chosen to keep going anyway. So if this resonated with you, if you saw yourself or someone you love in these words, carry it forward. Let it remind you that survival is possible. That community matters. That asking for help is brave. That starting over isn't failure. That you are enough exactly as you are. This is where the story ends. But your story, wherever you are in it, continues. And whatever chapter you're in right now, however dark it feels, remember, Other people have walked through this darkness and found their way to light. You can too. One step, one day, one breath at a time. You can too. There's a truth about human resilience that stories like this expose. We are never as fragile as we fear, nor as invincible as we hope. Somewhere in between those extremes lives our real strength, the kind that emerges not from avoiding pain but from moving through it. This story is about abandonment, yes, about pregnancy and single motherhood and financial collapse. But beneath those specifics lies something universal. The experience of having life shatter your expectations and being forced to rebuild from fragments. That happens to all of us eventually. Maybe not in this exact way, but in some way. The job you lose. The diagnosis you receive. The relationship that ends. The dream that dies. The version of yourself you thought you'd become that never materializes. Life breaks everyone. That's not pessimism. It's fact. But here's what matters. What you do after the breaking. You can stay in the rubble. Many do. It's understandable. The rubble is familiar. It's evidence of what was. Leaving it means accepting that the life you planned is gone. That the person you were might not exist anymore. That forward means letting go of what could have been. That's terrifying. So people stay stuck. Replaying the past. Nursing grievances. Building monuments to their pain. Or you can do what she did. Pick up the pieces that still work. Let go of the ones that don't. And start building something new. Not better necessarily. Not easier. But yours. Built by your hands from what remains. That's the universal lesson here. Not about pregnancy or abandonment specifically, but about the fundamental choice we all face when life doesn't go as planned. Do we let the breaking define us, or do we let the rebuilding? She chose rebuilding. But it wasn't a single choice. It was thousands of small choices made over months and years. Getting out of bed when staying seemed easier. Applying for help when pride said not to. Assembling a crib she didn't have energy to build. Making pancakes when she was exhausted. Choosing forgiveness when anger felt justified. Small decisions. Barely noticeable individually. But accumulated, they became survival. Then growth. Then a life. That's available to anyone. In any circumstance. The details change, but the principle remains. You survive impossible things by breaking them into possible pieces and handling one piece at a time. This story also teaches something crucial about community. We've built a culture that celebrates independence. Self-sufficiency. Pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. Doing it alone. But that's mythology. Dangerous mythology. Because no one survives alone. No one rebuilds without help. She survived because people showed up. Friends who packed boxes. Strangers who approved applications. A landlord who showed mercy. A system that, however imperfect, provided a safety net. Community isn't weakness. It's how humans are designed to function. We survive in connection, not isolation. Yet we're ashamed to need help. We apologize for struggling. We hide our pain because we think strength means carrying everything ourselves. But real strength is knowing when you can't. When the weight is too much. When asking for help is the bravest thing you can do. If you take nothing else from this story, take that. Needing help is human. Accepting help is wise. Offering help is sacred. We're all one bad day, one tragedy, one unexpected crisis away from needing the kind of support we never imagined we'd require. Creating communities where that support exists isn't charity. It's survival insurance for all of us. This story also reveals something about forgiveness that's worth considering. She didn't forgive him because he deserved it. She forgave him because carrying anger was destroying her. That's counterintuitive. We think forgiveness is something we give to people who've earned it through remorse or change or suffering. But that makes forgiveness transactional. Conditional. A reward for good behavior. Real forgiveness is different. It's not about them at all. It's about you. About choosing peace over pain. About refusing to let someone who hurt you continue hurting you through the bitterness you carry. That doesn't mean reconciliation. Doesn't mean trust. Doesn't mean letting them back into your life. It just means unhooking yourself from the weight of what they did. It's not easy. It's not instant. But it's freedom. And finally, this story reminds us that the life we build after everything falls apart is often more authentic than the life we had before. Not better necessarily. Not what we would have chosen. But more aligned with who we actually are versus who we thought we should be. She didn't want to be a single mother. Didn't plan it. Didn't choose it. But becoming one stripped away everything superficial and left only what mattered. Her daughter, her strength, her community, her purpose. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to us removes the distractions and shows us what's real. That's the gift hidden inside the devastation. The clarity that comes from having everything else taken away. So whatever you're facing right now, whatever has broken in your life, whatever future has been stolen, whatever pain you're carrying, know this. You can survive it. Not because you're special or strong or chosen, but because humans are remarkably resilient when we choose to be. When we accept help. When we take it one day at a time. When we build community instead of walls. The story of survival isn't written in grand moments. It's written in small choices made in the dark when no one's watching. When the outcome is uncertain and the path is unclear, but you decide to take one more step anyway. That's what makes us human. Not the avoiding of suffering, but the moving through it. The continuing despite it. The finding of meaning within it. And that's a story we all share, whether we realize it or not. 5 years after the door closed. Morning arrives the way it always does. Light first. Then sound. The city waking up outside her window. She stands in the kitchen of a different apartment now. Bigger. Brighter. Windows that face east so sunrise floods every corner. Emma is 5. Starting kindergarten next week. Tall for her age. With wild curly hair and questions that never stop. She's at the table coloring, tongue sticking out in concentration, creating worlds with crayons. On the counter sits the yellow mug with Emma's handprint. Faded now from years of use. Chipped at the rim. But still her favorite. She fills it with coffee, wraps her hands around it, feels the familiar warmth. The apartment is quiet but full. Full of Emma's laughter and artwork. Full of photographs documenting a life built piece by piece. Full of the kind of peace that comes from surviving impossible things and learning you're stronger than you knew. She walks to the window. The same ritual she's had for years. Looking out at the city. Watching it move and breathe and continue. But something is different today. Emma calls from behind her. Mama, come see. She turns. Emma has drawn something. A picture of 2 people. Big smile on the smaller one. Holding hands. Who's this? She asks, kneeling beside her daughter. That's me. And that's you. We look happy. We are happy. Emma says it like it's the simplest fact in the world. And maybe it is. She pulls Emma close, kisses the top of her head, breathes in the smell of baby shampoo and crayons and childhood. Yes, we are. Later, after breakfast and cleanup and getting Emma dressed, they walk to the park. Hand in hand. The same park they've been going to for years. Emma knows every corner, every hiding spot, every good climbing tree. At the entrance, Emma spots a friend and runs ahead, calling over her shoulder, Mama, watch me. She watches. Always watching. Her daughter swinging from monkey bars with fearless confidence. Laughing with friends. Completely unaware that her existence was once the center of chaos and pain. That's the gift. Emma gets to grow up knowing love without knowing the cost. Knowing stability without remembering the struggle. Knowing her mother is strong without understanding what that strength required. A woman sits down on the bench beside her. Pregnant. Very pregnant. 8 months maybe. She looks tired, overwhelmed, like she's carrying more than just a baby. They sit in silence for a moment. Then the woman speaks. Is that your daughter? Yes. She's beautiful. Thank you. The woman hesitates. Then quietly, I'm doing this alone. 4 words that say everything. She turns, really looks at the woman. Sees herself 5 years ago. The fear. The uncertainty. The crushing weight of not knowing if you'll survive. It's hard, she says honestly. Harder than anyone who hasn't done it can understand. The woman's eyes fill with tears. I'm scared. That's normal. Does it get easier? She considers the question. Thinks about sleepless nights and financial stress and the constant juggling of responsibilities. Thinks about Emma's first fever, her first day of daycare, every milestone navigated alone. No, she says. But you get stronger. And that makes the hard parts feel different. The woman nods, wiping her eyes. You'll make it, she says with certainty. Not because it's easy, but because you don't have a choice. And you'll discover strength you didn't know you had. How do you know? Because I've been exactly where you are. And I made it. The woman looks at her. Really looks. Searching for proof that survival is possible. Thank you, she whispers. You're welcome. And when it gets impossible, remember. 1 day at a time. Sometimes 1 hour. Sometimes 1 breath. Just keep going. The woman nods. Then stands and walks away, 1 hand on her belly, carrying hope she didn't have 20 minutes ago. She watches her go and feels something click into place. This is why she survived. Not just for Emma, but to be proof for others that survival is possible. That broken things can heal. That starting over isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of a different one. Emma runs back, breathless and sweaty. Mama, I'm thirsty. Let's go home. They walk back hand in hand. Emma chattering about her friend and the swings and can they have ice cream later. At the apartment building entrance, she pauses. Looks at the door. It's just a door. Nothing special. But she thinks about all the doors in her story. The one that closed so softly it broke her heart. The ones that opened to new possibilities. The ones she walked through alone. The ones that led here. Emma tugs her hand. Mama, come on. She opens the door. Steps inside. Emma races ahead toward their apartment, already talking about what she wants for lunch. She follows slowly, taking in every detail. The hallway that once felt like failure now feels like home. The stairs she climbed while pregnant and terrified now climbed with purpose and peace. Inside the apartment, Emma is already pulling out books for story time. She sits on the couch and Emma climbs into her lap, fitting perfectly in the curve of her arms. They read about dragons and adventures and happy endings. Emma asks questions. Interrupts with observations, points at pictures. And in that moment, with her daughter warm against her chest and sunlight streaming through windows and the sound of the city humming outside, she understands something profound. This is the happy ending. Not a man coming back. Not a perfect life. Not erasing the pain. But this. Emma and her. Together. Surviving. Thriving. Building a life from the pieces that remained after everything fell apart. She kisses Emma's head and closes her eyes. And in the darkness behind her eyelids, she sees herself 5 years ago, standing by a window, pregnant, alone, broken, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. She wants to reach back through time and tell that woman, you make it. You survive. Your daughter is beautiful and healthy and happy. You find peace. You discover strength. You rebuild. You heal. But that woman couldn't have heard it. Wouldn't have believed it. Had to walk the path herself to understand that survival isn't a destination. It's a practice. Emma yawns. I'm sleepy, Mama. Nap time. Okay. She carries Emma to her room, tucks her into bed, draws the curtains. Emma's eyes are already closing, one hand clutching her stuffed rabbit, the other reaching for her mother's hand. "Love you, Mama." "Love you too, baby." She sits there until Emma's breathing evens out, until she's sure her daughter is asleep and dreaming of dragons and adventures. Then she walks back to the living room, to the window, to the place where she stood 1,000 times before. The city stretches out below, endless, moving, full of people living their own stories, their own struggles, their own survivals. She places her hand on the glass, cool against her palm, and she whispers one final time, "I promised myself I wouldn't break." A pause. Then, softer, "And I didn't." The light shifts. The city continues. Emma sleeps peacefully in the next room, and she stands there, whole and healed and home, proof that the human heart is more resilient than we ever imagine. That doors closing can lead to doors opening. That endings can become beginnings. That sometimes the life you didn't choose becomes the life you were always meant to live. Outside, a bird lands on the fire escape, the same spot where Emma once pointed with delight. It sits there for a moment, then spreads its wings and flies away, free. The way she is now. The way anyone can be if they just keep breathing. One day, one moment, one door at a time.